Inside Sing, lifers who lost hope. The walls that never sleep. On the eastern bank of the Hudson River, just 30 miles north of New York City, stands one of the most infamous prisons in American history. Sing Correctional Facility has held some of the most notorious criminals in the United States since the early 19th century. Murderers. Organized crime figures. Political extremists. Men sentenced to die. But beyond the headlines and history books is another story. A quieter one. The story of lifers, men sentenced to spend the rest of their lives inside these walls. For some, hope survives. For others, it disappears slowly, year by year, appeal by appeal, parole hearing by parole hearing. Tonight, we step inside Sing. And we ask a difficult question. What happens to a man when the system tells him he will likely never walk free again? If you value deeply researched, fully factual prison documentaries, support the channel. Like this video and subscribe to the Inmate Diaries. Your support allows us to continue sharing accurate and important stories from behind prison walls. Now, let's begin. A prison built by prisoners. Sing opened in 1826. It was built by prisoners themselves, transferred from Auburn Prison under the supervision of Elam Lins, a prison reformer who believed in strict discipline and labor as tools of correction. The original cell block, known as the Big House, was constructed from stone quarried on site. For decades, the prison operated under the Auburn system, enforced silence, lockstep marching, hard labor, and severe corporal punishment. Public executions were once carried out here. In 1891, New York State centralized executions at Sing. Between 1891 and 1963, more than 600 people were executed at the facility, primarily by electric chair. The electric chair housed at Sing became one of the most well-known in American penal history. But executions are no longer carried out here. New York effectively ended the death penalty in 2007 after a series of court rulings found the state's capital punishment statute unconstitutional. Today, Sing houses individuals serving various sentences, including life sentences with and without the possibility of parole. The prison has changed. But the weight of its history has not. What life really means in New York. In New York State, a life sentence does not always mean the same thing. Some inmates are sentenced to life with the possibility of parole, meaning they may become eligible for release after serving a minimum term, often 15, 20, or 25 years, depending on the conviction. Others are sentenced to life without parole, a sentence legally referred to as LWOP. These individuals will never be eligible for release. As of publicly available New York State data, hundreds of individuals across the state prison system are serving life sentences. At Sing, many inmates are serving long-term sentences for violent crimes, including murder. Some maintain their innocence. Some accept responsibility. Some continue filing appeals decades after conviction. But for lifers, time behaves differently. When the possibility of freedom fades, so can the sense of future. Studies from correctional psychology research suggest that long-term incarceration is associated with increased rates of depression, institutionalization, and social withdrawal, particularly among inmates serving life terms. These are documented trends. Not speculation. Yet each case remains individual. Each story unique. Men who became numbers. Inside Sing, names are often replaced by numbers. Every inmate is assigned a DIN, a department identification number. It follows them through transfers, appeals, and decades behind bars. Some men entered Sing in their early 20s. Many are now elderly. According to New York State prison data, the population of incarcerated individuals aged 50 and older has increased significantly over the past decades, mirroring national trends in long-term incarceration. Aging lifers face unique realities. Chronic illness. Limited family contact. Friends on the outside who have passed away. Parole hearings that grow shorter, and sometimes feel more procedural than hopeful. The Bureau of Justice Statistics has documented that individuals serving life sentences represent a substantial and aging segment of the U.S. prison population. At Sing Sing, some of these men have spent more time inside than outside. And for a portion of them, hope has thinned. Not in dramatic outbursts, but quietly. Parole and the possibility of freedom. For lifers eligible for parole, hearings typically occur after the minimum term has been served. In New York, the Board of Parole evaluates factors including the seriousness of the offense, institutional record, rehabilitation efforts, victim impact statements, and perceived risk to public safety. Approval rates have fluctuated over time. Advocacy organizations have argued that parole denials in certain decades were influenced heavily by the original crime rather than institutional conduct. State officials have maintained that public safety remains the guiding factor. These debates are documented in legislative hearings and public reporting. For inmates, the experience is intensely personal. A denial often means waiting another 2 years before the next hearing. For someone who has already served 25 years, 2 more can feel both short and endless. And over time, some stop preparing for the possibility of release at all. Isolation without solitary. Not all isolation occurs in solitary confinement. Many lifers live in general population. They attend programs. They work prison jobs. They interact with others daily. Yet psychologists studying long-term incarceration have documented a different form of isolation, emotional withdrawal. As years pass, outside connections weaken. Children grow up. Parents die. Friends stop writing. For some lifers, the outside world becomes abstract, unfamiliar, even intimidating. Research published in correctional mental health journals indicates that institutionalization, adapting deeply to prison structure, can make the idea of release psychologically overwhelming. This is not universal, but it is documented. And in facilities like Sing Sing, where men have spent decades inside, it becomes part of the invisible landscape. A day that repeats itself. At Sing Sing, the day begins early. Housing units conduct regular counts, a security protocol used across New York State correctional facilities. Officers verify that every incarcerated individual is present and accounted for. After count, the routine unfolds. Breakfast, work assignments, program call-outs, yard time, medication lines, evening count. The structure is deliberate. The schedule is fixed. For men serving life sentences, routine can provide stability. It can also blur the passage of time. Correctional policy manuals outline these daily structures clearly, designed to maintain order and reduce conflict. But for lifers who have been inside for decades, the repetition can create a psychological compression of time. Years collapse into routines. Holidays pass with little change. Seasons are noticed mostly by the temperature of the yard air. Some men measure time in parole hearings. Others measure it in the aging of their own bodies. And some stop measuring at all. Working inside the walls. Like most New York State prisons, Sing Sing operates internal work programs. Incarcerated individuals may work in maintenance, food service, laundry, clerical support, or correctional industries through Corecraft, the manufacturing division of the New York State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision. Corecraft products include office furniture, textiles, and other goods used by state agencies. Wages for incarcerated workers are set by the state and are significantly lower than minimum wage. Exact rates vary by assignment and are publicly documented in DOCCS policy materials. For lifers, work can serve different purposes. Some see it as structure. Some see it as discipline. Others see it as one of the only remaining forms of agency available to them. Research in correctional sociology suggests that meaningful work assignments can reduce disciplinary infractions and provide psychological benefit. But the benefit depends heavily on the individual. For a man who believes he will never leave prison, work may feel purposeful. Or it may feel like an endless cycle. The law library and last chances. For some lifers, hope narrows into paperwork. The law library becomes a destination of last chances. New York State provides incarcerated individuals access to legal materials, either through physical libraries or legal assistance programs. Appeals. Post-conviction motions. Habeas corpus petitions. In rare cases, convictions are overturned years, even decades, later. Such reversals are documented through appellate court records. But the majority of appeals are denied. Statistics from state and federal courts show that post-conviction relief is difficult to obtain, particularly after initial appeals have been exhausted. Still, some lifers dedicate years to studying case law. They learn procedural rules. They assist other inmates with filings. And they wait. When motions are denied, the impact is not always visible. No headlines. No public announcement. Just a stamped document returned through institutional mail. For some, each denial erodes a layer of belief. Faith, programs, and redemption. Sing offers religious services, educational programs, and counseling initiatives, similar to other New York State facilities. Chaplains representing multiple faith traditions conduct services weekly. Educational programs may include GED preparation, college-level coursework through approved partnerships, and vocational certifications, depending on funding and availability. Participation in programs can positively influence parole decisions, according to publicly documented parole board guidelines. For some lifers, faith becomes central. Not as a strategy for release, but as a method of survival. Researchers studying prison religion have documented that spiritual participation can reduce disciplinary incidents and provide coping mechanisms for long-term incarceration. Yet faith does not erase a life sentence. Redemption, in a legal sense, is separate from redemption in a spiritual sense. And for men serving life without parole, the distinction can be stark. The aging cell block. Sing is one of the oldest continuously operating prisons in the United States. Portions of its original cell block date back to the 19th century. Over time, modernization efforts have been implemented, but the physical structure reflects its age. The aging prison population presents new challenges. According to Bureau of Justice Statistics data, the number of incarcerated individuals aged 55 and older has risen significantly over the past several decades nationwide. In New York State, correctional facilities have reported increasing medical costs associated with older inmates. Chronic illnesses, mobility limitations, and long-term care needs are now routine aspects of prison administration. For lifers who entered prison in their 20s, aging inside can create a layered reality. They are no longer the men who committed their crimes. But they are still the men serving the sentences. When hope begins to fade. Hope rarely disappears all at once. It thins. A denied appeal. A parole rejection. A family member who stops visiting. An attorney who retires. A health diagnosis that changes perspective. Mental health professionals working in correctional settings have documented that long-term incarceration can be associated with depression, anxiety, and feelings of futility. These findings are published in peer-reviewed journals and correctional health assessments. Not every lifer loses hope. Many pursue education, mentorship roles, restorative justice programs, or spiritual growth. But some quietly withdraw. Correctional officers, according to publicly documented interviews in criminal justice reporting, sometimes observe behavioral changes in long-term inmates, less engagement, fewer program requests, increased isolation. These are observations reported in journalism and research, not universal truths. Each man's psychological journey remains individual. But inside Sing Sing, hope is not evenly distributed. And for some, it has faded into something quieter. Release, rare but real. Although some men at Sing Sing are serving life without parole, others are eventually released. According to New York State Board of Parole data, individuals serving life sentences with parole eligibility may be granted release after completing their minimum term. If the board determines they no longer pose a risk to public safety. Approval rates have fluctuated over the years, influenced by policy changes, legal reforms, and administrative priorities. These shifts are documented in state records and legislative reviews. For those who are granted parole after decades inside, re-entry presents profound challenges. Housing, employment, technology unfamiliarity, reconnecting with family members who aged without them. Reintegration programs exist in New York State, but outcomes vary widely and are shaped by age, health, and support networks. Release is not the end of the sentence. It is the beginning of a different struggle. The men who will never leave. For those serving life without parole, Sing Sing is not temporary. It is permanent. New York law allows life without parole for certain first-degree murder convictions and specific aggravated cases. These sentences are defined clearly in the state's penal code. For these men, there will be no parole hearing. No release date. No final appeal in most cases, once appellate options are exhausted. Some become mentors to younger inmates. Some focus on faith. Some withdraw. Correctional administrators are responsible for housing, healthcare, and safety, regardless of sentence length. The sentence is legal. The time is finite in a biological sense. But not in a legal one. The walls and what they hold. Sing Sing has stood for 2 centuries. It has witnessed executions, reforms, riots, and policy changes. It has housed men who will one day leave. And men who will not. Inside Sing Sing, Lifers Who Lost Hope is not a story about innocence or guilt. It is not an argument for or against sentencing laws. It is a factual examination of what long-term incarceration looks like, inside one of America's most historic prisons. Hope survives in some cells. In others, it has faded. But the walls remain. And every morning, the count begins again. If you value accurate, deeply researched prison documentaries, support the Inmate Diaries by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Your support helps us continue telling real, fully verified stories from inside the justice system. Thank you for watching. Until next time.